Hello everyone, I am Bradley Sward, Associate Professor of Computer and Information Science at the College of DuPage in Glen Ellen, Illinois. And this video today is going to use GameMaker Studio version 2.3. We're going to use GameMaker language and we're going to talk about basic AI states. We're going to set up a state pattern. I've done this in previous videos, I've done this a lot over my years, but we're going to create like an enemy that patrols a specific position in space. Then if they see you as the player character, they'll chase after you until they no longer see you anymore, and then they'll return back to where they started off and continue patrolling near the spot where they started out. So that's the thought process here. So let me show you. This is the game I have so far. You can see I just have a very basic skeleton outline. I'll show you everything. The red character is me. The yellow characters are the enemies, and everything will be moving around. I'm not going to play with cameras. I'm not going to play with all sorts of fancy stuff today. Today is just to show you how to get the state patterns moving along. So coming back to it from a sprite standpoint, everything in my game here is 40 by 40. The wall is 40 by 40. It uses the upper left-hand position for the sprite, for the origin point. The player is 40 by 40, but it's a circle. I centered it the same with the enemy. The reason being, if I ever wanted to come back and add controller support or this or that or anything else, this doesn't hurt anything. And the worst I can do is just make sure I put the objects in a room, not stuck in a wall, and then everything's going to be just fine. My room again here is double sized, so 2560 by 1440. I probably could have made it a little smaller for the demo, but again, this gives me an opportunity, since this is technically 4 screens large, if I wanted to play with the viewports and make it so that I can't see the whole screen at one time or the whole room at one time, that's more than adequate. Okay, so I have wall objects, I have player objects, and again, I have this idea of a state pattern, and so I've discussed this in previous videos. Go back and watch those videos if you need to. But I have a base class for the enemy, which is the overarching, just the parent for everything. I have an init state, and I don't have any code right now. Just forgive me on that. I don't have any code yet, but I have the init state, which will set up. I don't have anything to really set up when it comes to like hit points or ammo or anything like that. This is not the point of this again, but just so you could have that understanding. And then the init state will move into the patrol state. And again, this is a video from a previous lesson. My move slide solid function just makes this movement in a top-down game much easier, and it makes it so I can actually move fractional pixels using randomness. And it's just, again, it's maybe a little complicated, but it gets the point across. And so I've incorporated that with my player object. So in a step event, I'm just quick and dirtying this up to get to the main here. So I say left, right, up, down, just move around. And I made every object in my game solid. All the players, all the enemies, all the walls, everything right now is completely solid. So however I move around, everybody's happy. I can't go into anything. They won't be able to go into me because everyone's going to be using move slide solid functions. And so there we go. So we're ready to discuss the important part here of how to start incorporating the AI of this character here. So the objects that I actually have in the room are the init state objects, because again, the init state is ultimately where in a create event here, this is where I would put, variables that I want to maintain. So like if I wanted to say like max hit points equals 10, I don't know what, if that means anything to you. Current hit points equals 10 and ... all the way down. This is where you would fill this in. And then this is the no touchy part. No touching. Instance change. And this is where I would literally change into the enemy patrol state. And always a true here when it comes to that instance change. And so that's pretty much it. And we're never going to use this stuff. This is just to show you that you can pop that in, and those variables are part of that object forevermore as I move around and change from state to state. So now in my enemy patrol state, there are many ways you could do this. You could add pathing. You could do all sorts of crazy stuff. I'm just going to keep it relatively simple. First thing I want to do is just have a draw state here. And I'm going to do a draw set color to see yellow. And I am going to draw self and then I'm going to draw text. I am going to draw a P for patrol, and I'm going to put it at, I'm going to put it at x comma, or x start comma x y start. So this is the starting point of our object, and it's always going to draw wherever the object starts off in the world. It's going to draw a P. We're going to maintain that so we can keep track of the pieces of data. We're going to, we can see it on the screen. We can visualize this. Okay, so to get the rest of this going, we have a create event, and in the create event, I'm just going to basically be triggering the alarm just to get it started, so I don't have to duplicate my code and write this in 2 different places. So I just say, it'll just sit there for 1 game frame, and then it'll move over into the alarm event. And so this is the code I've written for this. I got to rearm the alarm. So every 2 seconds, it's going to rearm and basically call this alarm every 2 seconds. And so what happens is, if the distance to point, if this object is greater than 120 pixels away, it's going to start working its way back to where it started, the starting position, the x start and the y start. But if the object isn't 120 pixels away from that starting position, then we'll just pick a random direction and then in a step event we will walk direction comma 1. The speed will be 1. So let me say 3 events, and the actions, pretty simple actions by the way, but they get you to here. And so this is a very simple patrol state. And so the characters, when they get too far away, start working their way in. And so there you go. So like, as long as you don't have anything weird around here, if you don't have any like barriers in the way, something, they'll have no problem kind of patrolling this empty space and just walking around. They'll never get too far away, but it'll look like it's, it'll look semi-random at least, right? So, but anyway, so the character will never get to be more than maybe, 200 pixels away from this starting position. No matter what is, I could leave this all day, every day, and the characters will never get lost in space here or lost on a different side of the map. So I think that's a pretty good representation of what we're looking for just a plain old patrol state. So now we have to figure out how to get out of the patrol state and work our way into the state where they're going to start coming after. Okay, so the first thing I did to make this happen is I'm going to add an enemy chase state that is parented to the enemy base class, because again, it is an enemy. Just because it's chasing you doesn't mean it's still not an enemy of, just because I'm sitting in a chair, I'm still Brad if I stand up or go to the bathroom or whatever, or go to eat dinner, whatever it is I do. It's the only thing. It's quarantine. It's all we do, watch TV and whatnot, right? So anyway, so that is how we would set up this chase state. We'll put more code in here later, I promise. Let me need it later. And then this is the code that's going to work our way through here. So I'm going to add on to the step event. If there's a collision between the enemy's X, the enemy's Y, and the player, if I'm going to basically draw an imaginary line between the player and me, and if there is not a wall, so you could look up the help on the collision line function. If it ends up being a no one, then let's change the enemy state. So the chase, so basically that's the only thing we're worried about right now. So I've got all my objects, they're all walking around, and then as soon as one of them sees me, the P will disappear and everything else he'll just stop because he's no longer in the patrol state. He is now in the chase state. So there we go. And they're all individualized, right? Every object has their own individual code running. Now I'm curious as to how some of these, interesting, right? Here, let me try this again. Because very interesting. How come all of them are P? I move around. How did some of them, okay, so that one moves around, that one's okay. Everyone else is still moving around, so that guy, what in the world? Oh, how in the world did he see me? I do not have an answer for this. Is it a sprite issue? I mean, I guess that's not necessarily 100% important right now. But just so you understand that it's GameMaker, things are gonna happen that you don't expect. No, everything, the sprites seem okay. There must be like a tiny little overlap or something like that where the line can go straight through and there is no wall somehow. I mean, I don't necessarily, right now, again, that's not necessarily what I'm worried about, but you can see that for the most part, the objects do go ahead and and obey proper behavior. So as soon as the character sees me, now it's time for the chase state. And so you would think it's easy, just go toward the player, but we're not going to do things. Well, what if, oh, I guess, let me say, like, what if the player's runs away and over here and the character's trying to chase after me? Well, how will he know, where to go? And that's what I'm going to show you now is the true AI pathfinding routines that GameMaker uses to create pathing and move the characters around so they can chase after you. So the end goal of this is to set up, this is my enemy chase state, is to set up a little bit of code here. I'm going to explain all of it. Don't worry, there's 3 events here and whatnot. Is to set up the shortest path between me and the player object, basically every chance I get. And so, like with this here, we're going to see here. So on a create event, as I'm moving into the chase state, I need to keep track of a path because eventually, because we have to maintain this thing ourselves, create and destroy it so that it's not a memory leak. And I'm maintaining the grid right now that we're going to set up. You'll see this in a second. We don't necessarily have to do this once we get things going. We can just kind of set up the grid ahead of time. Actually, let me just move the grid over here, out of here, because we don't have any destructible terrain. We don't have anything like that. So let me just make sure this runs, doesn't crash. Okay, good, doesn't crash, fair enough. And again, I'm going to describe this here in a second. And so my path is no one, this is my grid, this is my alarm, and on the alarm, here, I want to do this as well. I want to set up this, and I want to make sure I reset the alarm, and then I'll talk about everything here. I random 20. Okay, so what's going to happen here is I'm setting this thing up and I say, okay, I don't have a path right now between me and the other player, but we'll figure it out. We'll get there eventually. We're going to set this up. I don't have any code for setting the path up. I'm just setting up the grid and just making sure everything's working properly. And so I'm going to say no path, but the grid, there's 6 parameters to this thing. It says where in the game world do you want me to start drawing a grid? So of course I want the whole screen. So I say, okay, how about 0, 0? And then it asks me, how many cells do I want? Like basically what's the granularity of this? How many cells horizontally and how many cells vertically are going to make up the AI pathfinding algorithm here? So I want to take the room width divided by 40, the room height divided by 40, and basically that just gets me, if you look at the room, that sets up a grid that is this large. Every grid square is like basically a true false. Can I get there? Can I not? True or false? Is there a wall? And so, but right now it's all open because it's just a grid. Oh, I guess I got to come back here and fix this up. And so the next line after that here is to say, okay, how about we add all the walls into this? And it's pretty slick. GameMaker will automatically basically shut off all the places where the walls are, so GameMaker knows that you can't walk in those squares. And how do I know all this? Because I have a draw event here, and as long as grid is not equal to no, and I guess I can get rid of this now. Maybe I can, maybe I can't. So now you can see everybody's moving around, everybody's moving around, everybody's moving around. But the second somebody can see me, boom, there we go. What is happening here is that the grid is being drawn. Don't worry about everything. This grid, every square that is walkable is green, and every square that's something that's in the way is red. And it looks, unsurprisingly, it looks exactly like our game room did a moment ago, before they even saw me, because all the walls get blacked out or redded out, and then all of the green space is walkable. And so again, I was saying I don't need to draw the grid, but once I understand that it's working, but now that I know it's working, I'll just comment it out, and then we'll be able to actually figure out the pathing now. Okay, so I updated this just slightly. instead of no-oneing my path, I use this thing called path add, which just creates basically an empty path object. And this allows me to generate paths dynamically instead of having to go into the path generator here, because there's no way, how would you be able to generate every single possible path that could ever occur, right? I need to generate this with specific situation in mind when I go to do this. So I say, okay, when I create my chase path equals path add, my grid is my grid with the walls in there, and I just say, okay, the alarm is one game frame again, so that all the code that goes into setting everything up goes into the alarm event. So now in the alarm event, because I'm going to be doing this every so often, I'm going to delete whatever path was there previously. So because again I'm creating a new one, but I have to make sure I delete this because otherwise GameMaker will create what's called a memory leak, and eventually our program will slow down, and if we let the game play long enough, it will crash because we'll use all our available memory up. And so now I can say, just like I did before, get me a new path, an empty path, and then let's use the grid to create a path from my position to the player's position and allow me to travel diagonally if I need to. So, because depending on the game, sometimes you can just do cardinal directions, up, down, left, right, but this allows me to walk diagonally. And so that sets this variable up, this object up called path, and then I basically have to say, okay, now start the path, speed of 2, and you're never going to actually get to the player's position because the player is in the way. So you don't necessarily have to worry about what you fill in here. But I said path action continue. And then I said false for absolute because this needs to be relative. Okay, and then the reason for this line of code the way it is, 15 plus I random 20, is maybe you could imagine it, maybe you can't. These are very, very, very expensive operations to perform. And if I had every object doing this every game frame trying to find you, it wouldn't take very many objects to slow your game down. Because every game frame, it's doing all of this work to figure out the shortest path between those 2 points using that grid over and over and over again. So what I'm saying here is you can start walking for, from a quarter of a second to half a second. So I guess 3/8 of a second is the average amount of time this thing's going to walk towards you using the current path before it resets, because of course you move, it moves, so so it's going to about every 3/8 of a second figure out what the new path it should take is to continue and try to find you over and over and over and over again. So this is how it gets going here. So again, they're in the patrol state, but once you get going and once he sees me, now he comes after me, and it doesn't matter where I go. Because the pathing, like I said, the pathfinding is going to be perfect. I'm like, oh, I'm going to hide from you. Nope. He knows. Let's say right now he knows exactly where everyone that is coming after me knows exactly where I am and knows exactly how to get a hold of me if they can see me. And again, they will track me down to the ends of the proverbial earth here. Oh no, I'm stuck because of the way the pathing works, but that's not necessarily important right now. But you can see everybody else is coming after me. This guy's stuck in a wall. Again, this is not the end-all be-all for AI. This is just an introductory lesson. And so you can see now they're all trying to get to me, and they can't necessarily get to my exact position, so they're just basically swarming until I'm dead. Or I never will be dead, but I can't move either because of the way the move slide solid function works. If you want to get around that, you can just make the chase state, you can make them not solid if you really want to. Now I can walk through them. And they can walk through me, and I can walk through them. So they can chase me off forever. And so what I want to do now is set it up so that as I'm running away, and they're still trying to come after me, but if they don't see me after a certain amount of time as they're chasing me, like right now, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, maybe they give up the chase. You're right? I mean, maybe, they're like, because maybe the goal would be to get everybody in one position so I could just go and steal whatever. Here I go, I stole whatever I needed to steal because all these guys are so dumb. Horrible, horrible AI for that. So the thought process now is to set this up so that basically they're looking for me, and if a certain amount of time passes and they don't see me, then I will go ahead and turn this character into the return state. So then this is pretty much all I have to worry about pretty much to finish up the chase state. Because I'm chasing the character. We've done all this extra stuff here. We'll talk about alarm 1 here in a second. We've done this up. So it's every 3/8 of a second on average. It's figuring out the new path and it's following it. But on a step-by-step basis, at 1 frame at a time, it's checking to see if there's a wall between you and the player. And that's its line of sight. And then this is saying if on a frame-by-frame basis, I'm trying to draw a line between us and there is a wall between me, set the alarm, and in this case this is a 3-second alarm, and you have to have this in here, otherwise you'll continue to reset the alarm to 3 seconds and nothing will ever change. So I have to say if the alarm hasn't been set yet, set the alarm to 180, and so then, so basically it'll count down, and when it hits that timer and the alarm goes off, I'm going to change into this enemy return state. I haven't created it yet, so the game will crash 3 seconds in to that occurring. So I go, okay, here is everything, and here's my character, and I go, okay, found me, 0, 1, 2, 3, crash. Because it took 3 seconds, he hasn't seen me, there's been a wall between us for those 3 seconds, and so now what he's going to do is he's going to change into the return state. He's going to return to his patrol position. That's the goal. He's going to go back to his original patrol state, and then he's going to go in and go become the... and then he's going to go back into the patrol state, and then he's going to just walk around randomly again until he sees you. And it's pretty much the whole deal here. So let me create this enemy return state, and I'll talk to you guys about what I did to make that happen. Okay, so the return state is kind of like a combination of the previous states before, because there is a path you're trying to get from where you are currently back to basically your home patrol position. But you're also checking to see if, while you're doing that, if you still see the person, well, you're going to go right back into chase mode. So again, it's a combination of the two. Set the alarm to 1 frame when I'm returning, so I can do the work of setting up the path. This time around, instead of trying to find the player, I'm trying to go back to my home position, which was the X start, Y start position, get me a path, and start walking my way back. Maybe I could walk back a little slower. 1 instead of 2 or something like that. And then re-up the timer every time to, just in case the path changes. It shouldn't change, but maybe it will. Maybe if there's destructible terrain or something like that, maybe that will change over time. But anyway, and so the draw event here just draws the P just like before. And now the step event, this is where the magic happens, where I say every frame move, actually probably don't need this anymore. Just move slide solid direction, but it seems to work. Actually, let me try it out. Because it's already got the pathing, right? So the enemy chase state, does it have that? No, it doesn't have, because everything is handled by the pathing. So I don't need that in the return state here. I can get rid of this. But I do want to check to see, as I'm returning back, if I draw a line between the player and me and there's no wall, well, I see them again. So put me back in the chase state again. Otherwise, do distance to point and figure out, as I'm returning back, if I'm 10 pixels or closer to the starting point, well then end the path, because if you don't, the path will continue on and things will not go right for you. So you have to end the path you're on and then change back to the patrol state. So I say it's a lot of little things. Oops, and I added a little code because I was trying to debug this thing. That path end was killing me. I'm like, why do they run off into the sunset? Okay, so they're all patrolling. He's chasing after me a little faster now. He can see me for now. He can see me. He can see me. He can see me. 0, 1, 2, 3. Now he's going back, and he will go back until he gets to within 10 pixels. And it's all AI pathfinding, so you're guaranteed the shortest path. So he's walking back. And now when he gets 10 pixels away, he's going to go back into patrol mode. And now he's back into patrol mode, and he's just like any other character. And what's cool about this is, now that you have this going, you could trigger everybody. And as long as you get away from them for long enough, they will all return back to where they're supposed to come from. And now, so I can make the rounds, do my patrol, and have them do what they're doing, walk up to come and try to find me and stuff like that. They're back to patrol state, and eventually they're going to give up. And so you can see now they're all returning back to home. And so one last thing I need to add here is, oh, I think I showed it, is if I'm in the return state and they see me, here, let me show you that. Let me just get it working here. Just get him going. Okay, so 1, 2, 3. Now he's on the return. But at any point while he's returning, he sees me again. Now he's back on patrol. And let's see if he can. And now he didn't see me for 3 seconds again. And now he's returning home. And that's the basics for just a simple 3-state pattern. The patrol state that keeps you around a specific point. The chase state, they will track you down as best as they can, but if they don't see you for 3 seconds, then they'll return back home, because that's their main goal right now. You say, like, for just this AI is just patrol a space and maybe shoot you for a while, try to shoot you down. And but that pretty much covers it. So let's say, just as a quick review here, let's just kind of go through what have we talked about, what have we done here. Very simple player state. The only thing in the player is these 4 lines of code, these 4 if statements to move around. I have a base class that has no code in it. Notice how all the states are the child states of this object. And again, I started in the init state. If you have variables for hit points or ammo or magic or you name it, they would go in the init state. So they're all, created and generated. And then I would change to the patrol state immediately. And these are the init objects, are the objects you put into your room. And so now from the patrol state, again, setting up this alarm timer. Why does it do that anyway? So then what I can do is, while it's patrolling, move around by direction, check to see if there's a player. If they see you, go into the chase state. But otherwise, when the alarm goes off, check to see how close they are to that patrol position. And if they're too far away, walk toward it again. And if they're not, then just pick a random direction and just basically aimlessly walk around and reset the alarm timer. And that's the whole patrol state. You know, basically walk around aimlessly until you see the player. And then when you enter the chase state, that's when we generate the entire pathing here, which is not a lot of code. There's a lot of code behind this code, but there's not a lot of code on our side to set up that pathing. So get the path going, and then do this every 3/8 of a second on average, the way the alarm timer sets off. And so what happens again is they're trying to track you down as best as they can. They in essence know where you are at every moment, but if you can make it so that they can't see you for 3 seconds, 180 game frames, then they'll go back to the return state where they will work toward going back home. And that's what this is saying. Like, instead of going after the player, let's go back home. And at any point of the way, if they see you, they go back to the chase state. Otherwise, as they're going back home, if they reach basically 10 pixels of the starting position, they're done, and they go back to patrol state. So I said, you got to watch out for these state patterns. You got to make sure you don't get yourself stuck in a pattern that you can't get out of. Without this path end function, you will see that the character will just go off to infinity. It's just like they're going off into the inset. They'll go through walls. It doesn't matter. They'll just keep on going forever. So you got to watch out for that kind of stuff here. And so that pretty much covers the 3-state pattern. As you can imagine, as we've done with the platforming demos and all that other stuff, if you have an understanding of how you want to make the AI, you come up with the pattern. You come up with the state machine. You figure out, how do I get from state to state? What do I do when I'm in the specific states? Make sure you never get stuck in a state. And you can add more complex behaviors. Like if they're injured, they can try to retreat. You know, like or this or that. You name it, right? Like different, and have so much fun with that. Let's see. That pretty much covers what I wanted to show for this video. I think this is a lot of fun. AI isn't something we normally get to talk about at the 2-year level, because it's just there's a lot to understand before you can get there, right? So. But with GameMaker, we can kind of set things up and make things easy. And now I can go ahead here, if I really want to, I can eliminate these. Now that I have things working, I can simplify a little bit, eliminate these draw events. Yeah, definitely eliminate these draw events, because you don't need to see the dev mode stuff, right? And so now, and the chase state, do I have a draw in there? No, I don't have the draw in there. So now everything's working out as perfectly as I want it to be. Okay, so Yeah, because you don't know where they're patrolling. You just know they're patrolling. You just know they're coming after you. You don't really, oh no, what's happening? 1, 2, 3. And so that's great. And so as always, this is a good video for introduction to AI, but if you have any questions, if I screwed something up along the way, if I just completely forgot to talk about something after I did it in my own head, you know, these things happen. How about you email me at swardb@cod.edu. Put me a comment down below here, and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. If you have any questions, maybe I can advance this and make a second video, depending on the popularity of this. So cool. I hope you guys have a great day, and I'll see you in the next videos. Take care.